Hello, my name is Francoise Molenaar, and this is That Fertile Feeling, the podcast. If you've been trying to get pregnant for a while and you feel like life has lost a bit of its spark in the process, then this is the podcast for you. Every week, I speak to experts and peers from around the globe to discover how you can connect to your feminine flow and stop trying so hard to conceive, and how to put some magic back in your life and your relationships. Are you ready to make life just a bit more effortless? Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to a new episode of That Fertile Feeling, the podcast. And I am here today with Jade Adair, who is a massage therapist. She runs her own practice meant to be like the little animal therapies. And I met Jade in Ireland last month during my abdominal therapy training course, and she was an assistant there. She specializes in fertility work, so I thought it would be great to invite her on the show and to talk a bit more about her experience working with women who are maybe doing IVF or who are trying to conceive. So welcome, Jade, on the show. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Francoise. Thank you so much for having me today.
Great to have you here. And as a first question, how did you become an abdominal therapist specialized in fertility? Is there a story there, or how did this appear on your path?
I like to say that I very happily fell into this work. I trained as a massage therapist when I was 18 years old out of school, and
Mm,
that was 18 years ago. And I moved in and out of the industry and did different things over the years, and then applied for a job back doing massage therapy again. That I seen someone apply advertising for a Maya massage therapist, and I had absolutely no idea what that was,
mm,
and went down a rabbit hole, and it sounded like such interesting work. So I worked in someone else's clinic for them for just under 2 years, mostly seeing almost exclusively fertility clients. So women and couples who were trying to conceive either naturally, spontaneously, or through the likes of assisted fertility therapies like IVF and frozen embryo transfers. And once sort of nearly those 2 years came along, I was happy to move out on my own. I'd had enough information and enough sort of responsibility seeing clients. I was happy to sort of move on to seeing them by myself.
mm,
And I have been doing that work, as I say, for 2 years, the abdominal work, but hadn't done the training with Rosita Arvigo, who I know you've interviewed before,
mhm.
and who does the work with the Abdominal Therapy Collective. So I'd done different training across the way, and all roads seemed to lead back to Rosita. Her name always came up. So I decided in 2015 to travel to America to do training in the what was originally the Arvigo techniques of my abdominal therapy, and now Rosita has moved to the Abdominal Therapy Collective. So that was 2015, and then in 2018 I did the pregnancy training through with Arvigo and Hilary Lewin as well, which was amazing work to be able to continue to support the fertility clients that I've seen with the pregnancy work. Is such a lovely way to do things, and also trained as a doula during the pandemic as well too. So to be able again to support them through their birthing journey and then postnatally as well too is something that's really, really special. And the Abdominal Therapy Collective, what really spoke to me so much about it was the ethical side of the support, especially with the fertility work. As we've talked about, and I've talked to many other practitioners about this, when women are going through a fertility journey, they're so open to being taken advantage of potentially. And with this work, it comes, a great deal of responsibility to be very transparent and very open with those women. And the ATC, the Abdominal Therapy Collective, keep that in mind, of
Mm,
making sure that clients are very well supported through this journey. So that's me. The work that I do is the abdominal work,
mm,
mostly again for fertility, occasionally seeing women for painful periods, things like endometriosis, PCOS, fibroids, things like that.
mm.
But it's a lot of fertility talk and a lot of IVF talk, which is so lovely to be a small part of such a precious and sometimes very, very frustrating journey for those people.
Mm. And I love how you bring up that ethical side. I created a podcast a while back, I think it's over 2 years ago, where I
Mhm,
talked about my own experience with a fertility coach. And I think that was maybe 7 or 8 years in on my
mhm.
fertility journey. And I really felt like that was my final chance of having a baby, like working with her. I thought I tried everything else and this is what I needed to do. And I
Mhm.
remember having that first call. It was like a discovery call or something. And she pulled out all the marketing stops and I could see it happening. I could see how she was sort of steering me towards the very expensive package. I think it was €3,000 for 5 sessions or something. It was
Wow,
ridiculous.
my goodness.
And I could see it happening. I could see how she was working on my fear, putting like time pressure on me as well to pay before tomorrow, otherwise the price would go up again, and throwing in a bonus. And she really got me on my fear. It was fear-based selling, the fear of never
Mhm.
having a baby, that this was my only chance. And the work wasn't that good. I've worked with, energetic coaches before, so I know what's out there, and it was okay, but it wasn't like €600 worth, for a
Absolutely.
session.
My
Yeah.
goodness.
And I even told her somewhere, because the starting point was already so bad, because I could feel that she was selling me on my fear, and I didn't like that at the
Mm.
same time, but it was also, it drew me in. So just the starting point of that relationship was very confusing and very unaligned, and I didn't trust
Yeah.
her. Even while I was working with her, the whole start of that relationship wasn't based on trust. So I didn't get pregnant.
Yeah.
And then when I did get pregnant a couple of years later, she told me something like, "Yeah, I knew, you just had to wait."
Oh, goodness. Yes, how convenient.
So,
It
I see that in my own practice, the importance of ethics and knowing what you can and cannot sell, and you cannot promise anyone that they'll get pregnant. And also, when it comes to advertising, I have clients who've gotten pregnant, but I don't want to sell that way. I don't want to sell my work by saying I've gotten these women pregnant, because who knows what got them pregnant, right? I mean,
exactly.
yeah. What's your take on that?
Well, that's it with the abdominal therapy collective. I was always quoted as Rosita saying, first prize is your own health, second
Mm,
prize is a baby. So the focus is always on the client. And even in pregnancy, I do jokingly say to clients, it's your name that is on my schedule system. So it's this is who I'm going to focus on today. Now, what are you experiencing now? Period pain, clotting, color consistency of your flow, all of those kinds of things to mark out those known improvements, because I cannot promise that anyone will fall pregnant or have a healthy pregnancy. And as we talked about there, not even the best doctors in the world have a 100% success rate.
mm,
I've heard those stories so often, where women were literally promised a baby. I can get you pregnant, is what their practitioner told them, or their fertility coach, or whoever it might have been. And I think that is so dishonest, with it's not this place with this work. And I think with the abdominal therapy work, to be able to teach a client how to do their self-care massage, their home care,
mm,
is so powerful, to give them literally a tool that they can take away to use for themselves, to literally feel the difference within their own body. So they don't need to come back for a treatment if they
mm,
can't or don't want to, but you've given them a tool that they can use, and having that ongoing support as well. And
mm,
I think that is the most powerful thing, because again, as I'm sure you've experienced when you're going through a fertility challenge, what clients have shared is they're stripped from so much of their own power, their own responsibility. They're at the mercy of what their doctor tells them, what dates they have to go to the clinic, their blood test results, and they don't feel that they have much of a say really in what is happening. So if they're able to come in for a treatment to have that support, that's amazing. Or if they're just able to do their own self-care, massage and home care themselves, then again, it has given them that little bit of control back as
mm.
they go through this.
Can you explain a little bit how it works? So what do you do when someone's trying to conceive? How do you use abdominal therapy on them?
Well, that's it. The focus for the abdominal therapy from a fertility perspective is to try and optimize or improve the menstrual cycle. That's something that I talk about that being that sign, our body trying to tell us what's going on internally. So we cannot guarantee a positive pregnancy test, but if that client is seeing improvement with her own menstrual cycle, then that is enough even for her to be able to say that she can notice a big difference rather than, again, a practitioner telling them
Mm.
everything's better, everything feels and looks good. So I do a combination of different therapies alongside the abdominal work. So bring in some posterior work, especially around the sacrum and the coccyx. I also am trained in reflexology, fertility and pregnancy reflexology. So that is lovely to add in, usually when I do a castor oil pack on the abdomen to warm and soften that area before we start the abdominal work. It's nice to add in the reflexology as well. And it's as close to a full body treatment that we can do for that time. And the biggest part of the consultation, really, that I do, the health story, is deciding when that client might need the most. So, for example, if someone is not sure they're ovulating or they're not getting very positive, obvious signs of ovulation,
Mm-hmm.
then a best time to have a treatment is in the lead up to ovulation to try and improve those conditions for conception to take place. If that client is experiencing some spotting towards the end of their menstrual cycle, or they've had experience with recurrent pregnancy loss, then a treatment towards the end of the cycle might be best to ease their anxiety, to improve blood flow to what we hope is very early pregnancy. But they might not need the same kind of support then with ovulation. So it really does a lot of it comes down to the consultation and what that client feels that she needs the best time of support, really.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a little bit of a difference with what we can do. For myself, my preference is if everything else is all good,
Mm-hmm.
then I would see clients for 1 to 2 treatments in the stage once their bleed is finished, their period is finished, and before their ovulation, and potentially another treatment towards the end of a cycle if they need that little bit of a boost.
Mm.
But what I try to focus on with clients is getting them as close to what I like to refer to as a maintenance stage as quickly as possible. So during the health story, the consultation, trying to identify any potential issues with their menstrual cycle. And we're trying to get it as close to bleeding, bright red blood with no clots and no pain for 3 to 5 days.
Mm.
So if we can try and get them to having as close to a quote perfect period, that is something tangible that that woman can see. Literally, she's not relying on me to tell her everything feels good.
Mm.
She can literally see the difference for herself. And again, another important part with the health story, the consultation, is if the focus is purely just a positive pregnancy test, that is the goal, and ultimately what we're aiming for. But a lot of the improvements can be lost because we maybe haven't got to that final goal yet. So it can be nice to refer back to the consultation to remind some clients that they were relying on a lot of pain relief and they don't need that anymore. They were experiencing a lot of clots and they don't experience that anymore. So even though we might not have got to the stage of a positive test yet, there are still really vast improvements that have been made. And again, that can give them so much hope and so much positivity then for moving forward as well.
I love what you're saying about this perfect period, because that's not how we look at our periods, right? Or that's not what we're taught. We're taught that it's a nuisance. It's something that you want to cover up. You don't want to look at it. You don't want to talk about it. So we don't know what a normal period looks like. Um, I just started doing the work myself. So I trained with you in Ireland about
Mhm.
over a month ago. I just signed up because I had this amazing podcast interview with Rosita Arvigo. I thought, okay, I need to do this, but I'd never gotten a treatment myself. I never did the self massage. Like during that course, I learned how to do the self massage. Tried it for a month, and now my cycle is longer. Like usually it was only 23 days, and now I'm at 28 days.
Amazing.
I have the perfect period that you're talking about.
Mhm.
No pain during my menstruation. So I love this idea of looking at your menstruation as a mirror for your fertility, for your overall female health. And it's a bit of an eye opener, really, that you can look at it that way, that your body is giving you these signs even in your menstruation. and that you
Absolutely.
can work with that.
Hmm. It is, I try to be careful in the way that I describe it because I've had clients on both ends of the spectrum where they maybe already have close to a perfect period. And when we talk through the consultation, I do wonder sometimes how I can help that woman because she's already there. There's
Mm,
not sort of too much areas of improvement. But similarly, I've had clients where they maybe experience a lot of dark spotting in the at the beginning of a bleed and towards the end of a bleed. And then they get their positive pregnancy test, the first cycle, from trying,
mm,
and then they're worried that maybe there's harm because they didn't get to that perfect period before they conceived.
mm,
Um, and this is why we talk about, conceiving naturally is a spontaneous act. So there's no way of knowing when exactly that it will happen. Only IVF, can sort of account for that. But a spontaneous pregnancy can happen at any stage. And this work is just purely supportive. But if we can improve the period and get it as close to, I say, quote, perfect as
mm,
possible, because there's maybe no such thing. And it's not always absolutely necessary to have that. But
mm,
it is such a common belief, as you say, that periods are just meant to be painful and meant to be something that women have to just put up with. And it definitely does not have to be that way. Clients who suffer with things like endometriosis, that it can take longer to get them to the stage of being appreciative of their period coming in because
mm,
they do suffer with such intense kind of pain with that. But for the majority of clients, when they're coming in for things like painful periods, they are so surprised. And I'm thinking so much of a client at the moment who's gone through fertility treatment. And when she first came to me, uh, she was fertility. Didn't
mm,
really want to think too much about the period, was just focused on falling pregnant. And she was nearly annoyed when her first period did arrive. She'd taken a cycle off from trying to conceive, so we knew then that a period was coming,
mm,
and that can help. Looking at a period different, that it takes away the disappointment of just the period arriving, regardless of how painful it is or how the color and the consistency is. The disappointment is just there from not being pregnant. But if we know that it's coming, she was retelling me how many tablets of paracetamol that she had to take because she was in such pain. And she had only been doing the work, the self-care massage, for a couple of weeks. And she just couldn't believe it that she'd been suffering with painful periods for nearly 20 years from she was a teenager.
mm.
And she said, I can't believe all it took was a belly rub, I think was the word she used, a lovely abdominal treatment. And again, it was the self-care massage that made the most, that's the most consistent work that someone's doing at home. And she was able to, I think she went hiking on the first day of her period, where normally she would barely be able to make it from her bed to the bathroom and back again without needing some pain relief. So that was something so focused. Now she's still in her fertility journey. She did eventually go through IVF, and she should be getting her result very soon.
Mm,
So I'm keeping lots of fingers and toes crossed for her. It's been lovely to support her through that. But her focus was to try and improve those periods then before she undertook the fertility treatment,
mm,
which is a good starting point. And it is a reflection. I know a client a number of years ago was going through IVF. She'd had one unsuccessful cycle and then started with me just very soon after that unsuccessful cycle. And when her first period came afterwards, there was a lot of discharge, a lot of tissue coming away, a lot of clots coming away. She felt confident that she actually saw that clotting and discharge coming away before she undertook her next cycle of IVF,
mm,
that she sort of thought it was no wonder the first cycle didn't work, because she
mm,
said if all of that stuff was up there
mm,
within her uterus, then no wonder that embryo didn't stick around. It wasn't a healthy environment. But for her to literally see the change coming away with her next period, she felt more confident going into her next cycle of IVF, and she did ultimately conceive and had a lovely baby then 9 months later, which is amazing. But again, with this work, no way to prove that
mm,
had she done the treatments with me or done her self-care at home or any of the other things that she was doing made a difference. But she literally felt more optimistic going
mm,
into the cycle. And, as we're too familiar with working with clients, having that devastating news of an unsuccessful cycle, it really does such damage to your optimism.
mm,
So to be able to give somebody a little bit of that back again is really powerful.
mm. And it's more than just a belly rub, right? I mean, I can understand
It
why your
is, yes.
client would call it that, but can you explain a little bit about the mechanics behind it? Why are you seeing these results? What are you doing?
Well, I like to focus on, I don't know if it's the same where you are, but here in the UK, from a massage perspective, really all we can say that it does is it improves blood flow.
Hmm.
But when we think about what the areas of the body that we're actually working on, what are we improving the blood flow to? So that's the ligaments that hold the uterus in place, the ligaments that hold the ovaries up, the digestive system, which can have such an impact on how we metabolize our hormones. And literally, our hormones travel in our blood as well.
Hmm.
So we're having an effect on so many different parts of the body and so many different systems within the body as well too, which is why we see such amazing results that nearly sound far-fetched, that nearly
Hmm.
sound unbelievable. And this is why, going back to what we already spoke about with the ethics, I can't promise that everyone will get that result, the
Hmm.
same that someone else already achieved. But if we can keep within a reasonable cost and we're not insisting that clients are coming back in for a ridiculous amount of treatments,
Hmm.
and we're able to teach them the self-care at home, that it's within the realm that they're able to see those results for themselves without it being too much of a cost to them.
Hmm.
Um, but that's really it. This is what I like to focus on is the blood flow, but then thinking of what that blood is literally carrying and what that flow is affecting as well too, that it can
Yeah.
make all the difference. Um,
And
so the biggest,
that's why you're
sorry,
seeing like the perfect periods also is that the blood flow to the uterus improves, clears away maybe any old stuff that's there.
exactly. And that's why I like to think about it as nearly like a spring clean kind of effect. So with that client who had the unsuccessful cycle, that was her body releasing and letting go of old blood within the uterus. So anything we know that is not bright red blood, we know is old blood. So
Mm-hmm.
she was able to see all of that being released from goodness knows how long ago it was there, and felt very cathartic to her to watch all of that come away. But I like to think about it as a spring clean kind of effect. And for some women, usually in the consultation, I do describe it as spring cleaning your house.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think of the uterus as baby's first home, their first nursery, and you think of the spare room in your house, it maybe is, that needs a bit of a dusting, and it's got some old Christmas decorations in there and
Mm-hmm.
suitcases for holidays. And before we would think of putting the baby's crib in there, we want to clear it out and do a bit of a spring clean. And this is what this work is sort of about, is it preparing for conception, however that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that can mean a clear out of what was in there before. And the same as spring cleaning the house or that spare room,
Mm-hmm.
you're full of optimism when you first start. And then part the way through, when the dust is everywhere and there's boxes everywhere and everything looks a bit worse than it did at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning. And you might think, why on earth did I even start this journey? But you keep going because you know it will be better once that's happened. And again, the same with the self-care massage or the treatments as well. A lot of women do get improvement straight away, like the client I just shared that didn't need any pain relief with her first period after starting this work. For some women, it can get a little bit worse before it gets better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from an emotional aspect sometimes, but also from a physical as well too. If that person has a lot of scar tissue or adhesions from previous pregnancies or previous surgeries or from things like endometriosis, when we are literally going in there gently, but it is a powerful treatment on such a vulnerable part of the body, we are stirring all of those things up and they can come out in various different ways, sometimes through tears and a cathartic emotional kind of release, and sometimes through more of a physical kind of effect then as well.
Yeah, and I remember that from the course as well. So I got treatment every day because we had to practice on each other. And at some point, I just felt a lot of pain during the treatment, like physical pain.
Yeah,
And with that pain came so much sadness. But it was good because I felt like, okay, I remember saying, like, this is the pain that comes with release.
absolutely.
Um, so I just cried. I don't even know why I cried. There was just so much sadness
Yeah.
there in my belly. And then it was gone, and the pain was also gone with that. So there was that
Mm-hmm.
psychosomatic connection there of the emotions that were stored in my belly, and I got to release them. And it's been like that for this whole month. Like I do my self massage before I go to bed and I
Brilliant.
sleep so much better. Like I always wake up at 4 in the morning and I can't fall back to sleep. And now I'm sleeping through the night. So that's a good
Oh,
motivation to
wow.
keep doing it.
Absolutely.
But
Exactly.
yeah, I also have these really intense dreams. So I realize that I'm processing so much on an emotional level as well, that I'm storing there in my belly and I can feel it like after the self massage that there's so much freedom, space, yeah, relaxation. Um,
Absolutely. We hold as women, whether someone has been through a fertility challenge or not, we sort of do hold our tummies in and hold everything tight and keep our
mm,
posture up. And it has become such a vulnerable kind of part in the body, especially here, certainly within the UK, I know in other parts of Europe. And
mhm,
my original massage training was European standard. And I remember our teacher saying, we have to teach you the abdominal massage, but nobody will want their belly rubbed. No women will want that, but
mm,
we have to teach it to you to pass the course and to get our qualifications. And I like to say it's a very sad day if I don't get to touch some tummies when I'm
mm,
doing this kind of work. But a lot of women are still so guarded with that part of the body from even just an aesthetics kind of perspective, but especially if they've been on a fertility journey,
mm,
that part of the body holds such powerful emotions there
mm,
of sadness and frustration and of feelings of failure or of guilt of what they might have been through before.
mm,
Is so tough, and we hold so much emotion in that area. And that's where this work would have come from Donnelly Hugh, talking about the a woman's center is her uterus, and that's where we're working on really, which can be so powerful. I know there are some lovely clients I've worked with over the years, and the moment I put my hand on their abdomen, the tears come.
mm,
And they assure me that they want me to keep going because it's a good kind of cathartic release.
mhm, mm. And have you ever worked with women who've experienced loss, and how can you use abdominal therapy in that?
Unfortunately, yes. It's nearly rare that there are clients that haven't experienced a loss before.
Mhm,
From a clinical perspective, I know that a lot of the medical side of things would say there are good takeaways that we can have if someone has conceived before.
mm,
It ticks a lot of the boxes, but that's just on the clinical side. The emotional side can be absolutely devastating. So I've worked with a lot of clients who will come to see me after they've experienced a miscarriage. But I've also had the absolute privilege of working with women who might literally be going through a miscarriage as they're having a treatment. And those are usually, of course, clients who've maybe been with me for some time. So the trust and that relationship is already built up, and they know that they get a lot of relief from the work and the treatment in allowing or encouraging their body to let go. And one lovely client comes to mind where I supported her and her husband through their first IVF cycle, which was successful.
mhm,
And then she went on to conceive naturally during the pandemic. And when she went for her first scan, it was unfortunately confirmed that the pregnancy had ended, but her body was very much still holding on to
mm,
the tissue, to the product of the pregnancy. So, luckily, as close contact practitioners, we were allowed to reopen, and I was able to see her for a very gentle abdominal treatment. We did castor oil pack, we did gentle work on the body, and pelvic herbal steam as well. And she, I remember her being so cross about it that she really felt her body had let her down, which is such a
mhm,
common feeling
mhm,
going through something like that. But mostly, she felt a little bit embarrassed. She had been making jokes in early pregnancy of having baby brain and, being forgetful and having all of the symptoms. So when her scan confirmed that the pregnancy had ended a little while ago,
mhm,
she felt silly. She felt embarrassed,
mm,
and that her body was tricking her. And I remember saying to her, if anything, it showed to me from my perspective that it was how much her body desperately wanted to hold
mm.
on to that pregnancy. that
Uh,
it really was even though it was something that was not going to work, it was something that it really wanted to happen. So that was a really powerful treatment, a really emotional treatment. And about, I think, 36 hours later, she did start to experience that bleeding. And for her, that was her personal choice. She preferred things to happen at home. She didn't
mhm,
want to be in a clinic and wanted to avoid the procedure.
mhm,
Whereas again, for some of my clients, that is their preference to have it more medically managed. So again, it's lovely to be able to offer that treatment for some women if they prefer that, or to support them afterwards in their healing journey from they've experienced their miscarriage. And even with slightly further along, unfortunately, I've been again doing this work for so long that I have experienced with some clients where I've offered them pregnancy treatments, we've worked on their bump, and we felt kicks happening
mm,
underneath my hands. And that client is back, but unfortunately, there's no baby in
mm,
their arms and no baby in that bump anymore. And that again is a very emotional, very, very tough treatment. And a lot of the focus is, I think, thanking the body for keeping that woman safe, for keeping that baby safe for as long as they were able to, and a lot of forgiveness in that part of the body as well, to forgive, and to potentially move forward then to try again, which is another big conversation after a loss as
mm,
well. But I
yeah.
remember one lovely client in particular who worked medically, and she was a bit skeptical about this work.
Mm,
And but again, she was happy to give it a try, and she felt that she had experienced a miscarriage at least a few months, if not a year, before she came in for her treatment. And she said she always felt there was something lingering. She said she felt there was something still within her uterus that fully hadn't let go.
mhm,
And with her being very medically minded, she wasn't really open to exploring that it was potentially more of an emotional holding on.
mm,
Um, but we did the work. And with that first period that came after she started the work with myself and her self care, her home care, there was a lot of, again, discharge, a lot of clots coming away, and she felt so vindicated. She said, I knew there was something that was
yeah,
lingering there.
yeah.
And again, who is to say that that was, she'd had scans, she'd had everything checked and been reassured there was no leftover tissue from that previous pregnancy. But again, when she saw it with her own eyes, that
Mm,
was enough clarification for her. And she went on to conceive then very soon afterwards as well too, which is sometimes the case from an emotional and a physical aspect, that she had literally seen something change and
mm,
then went on to conceive a couple of cycles later. And,
yeah,
and thankfully that pregnancy was without a hitch, and
mm,
everything went very, very perfectly.
yeah. Wow, thanks. That's so many important points that you bring up. And I'm happy that you do that work, that you offer that support. I
It's
have my,
very special work, and it's not something that I take for granted. I know we can talk about the clinical aspect of this work and the ligaments and the blood flow and things like that. But at the end of the day, we're working on a body, and
mm,
that body has so much else going on with it. So for that person, that woman, to allow us to work with her in that kind of way is definitely very special.
yeah, and so important. I think it's changing a little bit now. Like when I had my miscarriage was in 2016,
Mhm.
and I remember going online trying to figure out what was going to happen to me. So we had a scan and there was no heartbeat. So I knew that I was going to have a miscarriage. I just didn't know what was going to happen, and I couldn't find any information out there. And if I Google now, I see there's more, like people pay more attention to this, women talk about it more, but still, it's so important to find that space where you can go, where there's someone to really support you and to bring you into, I think, also the sadness, because it's so easy to want to sort of push it away and not go there. But then it just stays
Mhm.
there at the more subconscious level. It keeps lingering. And by really opening up
It
to that,
does.
what's happening, and having someone, because it can also be really scary, right? So having someone there to just hold that space for you so that you can go there and feel what's going on and process it and regain that trust in your body, forgive it, as you said.
Absolutely. There's a lovely person I follow on Instagram, and I've quoted her many, many times, where she is very clear of saying that with a miscarriage, it is never the woman's fault.
Mm,
There is nothing that could have done. It really is the body deciding this is not going to end the way that we want it to.
mm,
Um, and it's that, you know, as women as well, we carry such guilt with us
mm,
all of the time. So working so much to really reassure from a medical perspective that there is nothing that that woman could have done any
mhm,
differently. And also that because of what they've experienced in the past, and I have this conversation so many times,
mm,
because again, unfortunately, miscarriages are so cruelly common
mhm,
that when a client does get their next positive test, that happy ending is gone. You know,
mm.
that moment of the first ever positive test and
Yeah.
then seeing that fade and that change and a loss happen, that
Mm,
excitement, it's never the same again because that thought will always be at the forefront or the back of the mind. Is the same thing going to happen again? But as this lovely doctor kept saying, every pregnancy is a new opportunity, which I
mm,
think is a lovely way to put it. That unfortunately recurrent pregnancy loss can be common as well too, but every pregnancy is a new chance, a new opportunity.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not the woman's fault. Often it's not even the body's fault, right? It's
No,
usually the embryo's fault. There's
it
just
is,
a
yeah,
genetic defect in the embryo. Well,
chromosomal,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
it can be
Um,
the sperm's fault. It can be the egg's fault. But
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes there's no way of knowing. And that's a big conversation even with some clients as well too, whether they go for genetic testing or they have the testing done carried out on the pregnancy, the product of the pregnancy. Even if they do pursue that, sometimes there is no answer.
mm,
There are so many clients that just come to mind of you know what they've been through with regards to their loss, and they're, you know, sometimes it feels odd to say that they are brave because I know that they definitely don't feel it that way.
mm,
But to be able to pursue that and to
mm,
continue on with their journey, which again is not the right choice for everybody. But I know that some clients have shared with me that despite what they went through, and some losses are very physically
mm,
harmful, harming, and it takes a lot of recovery, but they still do feel that in their gut, in their heart, that they want to continue on, that they feel their family isn't complete,
mm,
and that they have that. To me, that is brave. That's the braveness there is continuing on if they
mm.
feel that they're called to, that that's right for them.
Yeah. I wrote on Instagram the other day, like, what happens when you experience loss is that you really like physically feel that the other side of mother's love is heartbreak. That the two
Mhm.
go together, love and heartbreak. It's the other
Yeah,
side of the coin. And
yeah,
you get to experience that on a very physical, emotional, spiritual level. So it's a huge thing that you're doing to try again because you felt that heartbreak.
absolutely.
Super interesting topic, but I also wanted to talk to you about castor oil. So maybe
Mhm.
we can make a very abrupt shift
Absolutely.
because during our training, you gave a lecture on the benefits of
Yes,
working with
certainly.
castor oil. And it also came up during this podcast a number of times that you incorporate that into your work. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what castor oil is, what its historical uses have been, what its benefits are, its healing properties.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I like to say here in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, we've a cream here called Sudocrem, and it's sort of an ongoing joke within families that no matter what is wrong with someone,
Mm,
Sudocrem will fix it. The same as a cup of tea might fix
mm,
something here as well. But castor oil has very quickly become my go-to for almost anything. It's got such amazing kind of good sort of anti-inflammatory kind of powerfulness to it. So the castor oil itself is made by extracting the oil from a plant, and it's been used within folk medicine for many, many generations for loads of different conditions. So things like digestive disorders and issues with the liver, cramping, pain, cysts, and then conditions as well, like dry skin. It's fantastic for as bars and adhesions. Um, I like to say that the oil, castor oil, can be used anywhere that requires healing, and that can be from a physical kind of perspective.
mm,
So it can be great to improve blood flow anywhere where there's decreased blood flow, anywhere where there's signs of congestion. So great for things like constipation, where there's congestion there, but also emotional healing as well too. It can be very beneficial for. And there's different ways of using it. So it had a bit of a moment there, I think last year and still ongoing on social media,
Mm.
where a lot of people were talking castor oil. Differences in castor oil just topically on the skin. So I know I've used it for sunburn or for burns getting food in and out of the oven, as well as for dry skin and wound healing. It can be
Mm.
fantastic for. But from this context, especially coupled with the abdominal therapy work, is a castor oil pack, which is when we apply a good amount of the oil and layer cloth on
Mm.
top of that onto the abdomen. And it can also be used on the sacrum, on the low back as well, or again, really anywhere. But that's the way of using the actual pack together. And the idea and the benefits kind of with it is that there is an active enzyme within the castor oil called ricinoleic acid. And it has been shown, there are some studies, they're quite small,
Mm.
but some studies to show that it does reduce inflammation and improves digestion. And it's tough. It would be amazing to have more studies on these things, just to be able to kind of prove that yes, it really does do what we claim that it does.
Mm.
But thankfully, in some ways, the castor oil is relatively cheap to get hold of, very easy to get hold of. And so for definitely a lot of my clients, it's something that they're willing to bring into their self-care routine at home. And they hopefully will see the same benefits that we're hoping that they will. I like to say if someone is using a hot water bottle or
Mm.
any kind of heat to help manage their pain. So again, in the context of what I'm mostly seeing clients for, it would be cramping
Mm.
um, around with their menstruation. They're already use our hot water bottle. So by adding the castor oil, I like to say that it's supercharging the
Mm.
effects of the heat from the hot water bottle. And it's easy for them to build into their routine because they're already sitting, or lying in bed or watching
Mm.
a movie with a hot water bottle on the abdomen. So adding a layer of the castor oil is an easy improvement to make, and hopefully they will see the changes there.
Mm. So you would use it during your period.
You can do. So there's some specific times that we wouldn't use a castor oil pack. So if someone was pregnant
Mm.
or if there was a lot of bleeding, so for any sort of excessive bleeding, and if there are any sort of skin changes with using the castor oil, again, any sort of sensitivity there, or any digestive kind of discomfort as well too. But for trying to conceive, usually I would recommend during a period can be very helpful with the pain.
Mhm.
Sometimes the heat from doing the castor oil pack can increase your flow. But for some of my lovely clients, their flow is maybe already quite heavy.
Mm.
So they don't mind doing that, and they get so much relief from the castor oil pack already that it's worth that for them.
Mm.
But for women who don't experience that kind of pain, the ideal time to do the castor oil pack is once their bleed has finished, their menstruation is finished, and before ovulation. Because again, we're trying to encourage blood flow and decrease any inflammation there
Mm.
to encourage the best environment for conception to take place. But if that woman is not trying to conceive, or she's using the castor oil packs more for pain relief, then truly at any stage of the cycle, it can be beneficial. And again, a lot of women experience that kind of pain and cramping, low back pain, low abdominal pain in the few days leading up to a bleed. So again, that would be the perfect time to do a castor oil pack as well.
And would you put it sort of where the womb is located or on the ovaries or just?
Can Yeah, absolutely. So there's varying different ways to use the castor oil pack. So very traditionally, we would have poured the castor oil onto a cloth
Mhm.
to saturate it in the oil, and then apply that castor oil soaked cloth to the abdomen, the lower abdomen, or bringing it right up over the liver, up towards the ribs, or on the low back, or on all of those areas if required or if necessary. and then cover that area with another dry cloth just to protect the clothes and bedclothes and blankets from staining, because
Mm.
castor oil can be quite messy. And then apply a heat source on top of that. So things like an electric heat pad or a hot water bottle is perfect. And leaving that for 30 to 60 minutes and trying to rest as much as possible while the castor oil is doing its work. Another way to do it is the sort of a jar kind of method. So it's the way that I used to use it. Get a lovely big jar that's airtight and have a cloth in there, pour the castor oil into that, swirl it around a little bit again to make sure it's well saturated, and then take that cloth and apply it to wherever is needed. As you say, it can be the low abdomen over the uterus and the ovaries, or onto back, or right up then from the pubic bone right up to the ribs, then to cover the whole abdomen.
Mm.
And again, cover with a dry cloth for protection, and then a heat source on top of that. But some of the easiest ways to do it that we discussed and we were able to see during the training is a rollerball method.
Mm.
So having a, also almost, I describe it as like a deodorant bottle,
Mm.
but filled
Yeah.
with the castor oil. And you can just roll that on to the affected area. So again, the abdomen, the low back, wherever needed. And it gives you a wee bit more control over the oil. So just slightly less messy. And then again, dry cloth on top of that for protection, and a heat source on top. Or what some women prefer to do, especially if they are using the castor oil packs a lot, that it can be tough to find time in your day or in your evening to sit with the pack on for 30 to 60 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So what they will do is roll the oil onto the area, the low abdomen, the low back, just before falling asleep.
Mm.
And again, making sure that everywhere is well covered so the
Yeah.
oil doesn't get onto your bedclothes. And then the heat from your own body then overnight as you're sleeping is enough then to help aid the absorption and allow the oil to do what it needs to do. Um, and I've had some clients that are maybe a little bit skeptical of this work, and sometimes it is, it's those things that almost sound too good to be true,
Mm.
that you really can almost believe it will do all of the goodness. But again, the castor oil is relatively inexpensive.
Mm.
It's an easy thing to help bring into your routine as well. And for some clients, they've had just amazing results. I actually shared with a client a couple of weeks ago that I was going to be talking to you today
Mm.
about the castor oil packs, and she insisted that I share her story. So she had come to me again for trying to conceive, but was having intense pain a few days after ovulation, and she'd had all the tests done and all the scans done, and everything had come back absolutely fine, which is reassuring.
Mm.
But the pain was waking her during the night, which is
Mm.
affecting her sleep, it's affecting her work, it's affecting her home life. And we really changed about when would be best for her to have a treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because she was trying to conceive, so she was having the pain post ovulation, where some of the work is a little bit restricted because we're hoping that she is pregnant. But the pain was too intense, so she took a cycle off from trying to conceive and did the castor oil packs as soon as she knew the pain would be starting.
Mm-hmm.
And whilst she knew it was still there, it didn't disappear completely. It was much more manageable. And each time I see her, she cannot believe the difference that the castor oil packs have made. And I would love to be able to point to the study that proves exactly why and
Mm.
what has happened and what's changed.
Yeah.
It's anecdotal, which those stories definitely have their place, but it would be lovely to have the scientific evidence as well. But this is someone who'd been suffering with this pain for quite some time.
Mm.
She had tried pain relief, she had tried hot water bottles, and the difference that she got was from the castor oil packs. So, she's very happy that it's made the difference for her at least.
So, and she would apply it on the ovaries then.
Exactly, yep,
Yeah.
onto the lower
Yeah.
abdomen is where
The
she
lower
was feeling
abdomen.
pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the castor oil packs myself as well. So I told you I'm sleeping through the night. I'm not sure if it's the castor oil packs or the self massage or the combination, but
Exactly,
it
yeah.
has really shown me like the importance of developing that connection with your belly, doing the
Hmm.
work, developing a self-care practice.
Absolutely, so important.
And I don't think I've ever paid my belly that much attention ever.
Yeah. And it can bring up so many questions before, especially with starting this work. So many clients will say, I noticed this pain or this little twinge happened. And then they'll say, maybe I always had that pain. but
Mm,
I've just never noticed it before. And I
mhm,
do, when you start this work, especially you, as you haven't gone through the training side of it, but even from a client's perspective, you'll never pay as much attention to any period as you do
mm,
after you
mhm,
start this work, because we're so aware, and just as you say, so aware of the abdomen, of paying so much attention there, even with digestion, even with bloating or gas or burping after
mm,
eating, things like that. We're so aware
yeah.
of the abdomen because we're paying it so much attention as well too. And from a fertility perspective, a lot of women, if they've been through loss or unsuccessful cycles or have been trying to conceive for a long time, it really can feel like they almost sort of dissociate from the belly button
Mm,
downwards, like that
mm,
that part of the body is just not playing ball. We are not on the same page at all.
yeah.
So the self-care massage and the castor oil pack is just helping to bring those parts of the body back together again, to try and get everybody back on the same page and working towards the same kind of goal. And again, it's a tool. It's a very powerful tool that a woman can use at home for herself. She doesn't have to come in to see me for
Yeah.
me to do the castor oil packs for her. I do bring them into treatments. Again, it's a lovely way to relax the abdomen down and bring a little bit of warmth to the area before we sort of dive in with the abdominal work.
Mm,
But mostly it is done at home. And again, to be able to give that woman something that she can do for herself, when again, as we've talked about, so much of the power can be taken away on a
mm,
fertility journey. This is something that she can do for herself, which
yeah.
is very helpful.
Yeah.
And to
Well,
cover as well too, just with the IVF and
yeah.
transfer cycles, what you were maybe going to ask, absolutely safe and really, really helpful to use right up until embryo transfer.
Mm,
So again, once embryo goes on board,
yeah.
uh, then we would sort of hold off with the castor oil packs. I don't know that the castor oil is powerful enough to cause any kind of harm in that kind of way, but it's more about the preparation kind of stage.
Mm,
So the castor oil is fantastic for the stimulation stage during IVF. So a
yeah.
lot of them have a bit of pain at those injection sites, and also the bloating that can come with that as well. So
Yeah.
I very remember a client coming to my door for her treatment one evening, and she couldn't button her trousers because
Mm,
she was so bloated. And we did a treatment, a castor oil pack, the gentle abdominal massage across the area. And whenever she was leaving, that's the first thing she said when she walked out of the room: I got my trousers buttoned. She felt so different. Um, so again,
yeah.
so really, really powerful to use.
Well, thank you. That's something I really wanted to cover on this podcast, the castor oil packs, because I do think it's such a great tool to have in your fertility toolkit. Uh,
Absolutely.
what would be your general message for anyone who's dealing with fertility issues and or pregnancy loss?
I think I've been wondering about sort of this, and I think the most important thing that keeps coming up with a lot of clients that I have worked with is that I don't know how someone could go through this journey alone.
Mm,
That I think it's amazing to have some of the forum type groups
mhm,
online, and to have conversations about this work. But even on the more practical side of things, there are, taking IVF, for example, where clients are in and out of a clinic speaking to medical professionals a lot. There's so much that they don't know about what is happening and
mm,
what's normal and what's unexpected. And so if I'm able to answer some questions for those clients, and I only know because of, yes, some of the training that I do, and I don't know if you can tell, but I love this topic. It is
mhm,
so endlessly fascinating to me. And I do a lot of reading up about it, but it's what clients share with me, that what's worked with them or what their doctor told them, that I'm able to pass on as a little bit of information
mm,
otherwise. And, it's when I share that bit of information that so many clients will say, oh my goodness, I had no idea. I had no idea that that might help, or I had no idea that was normal. So again, I do wonder and feel for the women and couples who do have to potentially go through this journey on their own. So reaching out to, whether it's a fertility coach or massage therapist or whatever the case might be, just to have someone else to talk it through with,
mm,
I
mhm,
think can be really helpful, for someone to just have even a second set of eyes over, their IVF protocol,
Mm.
or to decipher what supplements they've been marketed on Instagram and if it's any
Mm.
good,
Yeah.
to try and help them sort of make a decision that's right for them. Absolutely. But with that then comes with being so careful of where someone is spending their money,
Mm.
and what they're going through as well too. And unfortunately, if it sounds too good to be true, sometimes it is. There's
Mm.
very little regulation with this kind of work. So I do encourage clients to have a consultation, and there might even be other practitioners that I recommend my clients see, but I will always say to them, go for one appointment and
Mm.
then come home, have a think about it,
Mm.
speak to your partner about it, see what the benefits were, see what the effects were. Is it something that you want to continue? What did you get out of it? And that goes for my work as well too.
Yeah.
I have some clients at the end of a consultation wanting to sign up, yes, I'll come back in. When do you want me here? And I say, nope, go home, have a think,
Mm.
speak to your partner, see what the effect is. Are you sleeping better? Do you notice changes with your cycles? And that's how I know, from an ethical perspective, if someone is coming back for more treatments, it's because they want to, and
Mm.
not because they felt pressured or
Mm.
because they felt encouraged to do so at the very beginning, because it can start off as very exciting when we're
Mm.
starting something like this.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure everybody's in sort of full control of their decisions,
Yeah.
because it is such a vulnerable kind of time.
Yeah. That's my main takeaway from that fertility coach that I work with as well. It's
Mhm.
like I should have said I want to do a single session first, just to see who you are, how you work,
Yeah,
how I feel. Um, Not get sold on the, like, everyone's doing marketing these days, and
it's
but you
it's
have to
really
stay.
tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So again, there's a very big ethical part to this work. And from a client's perspective, especially for any of your listeners curious about this work, it's finding someone that you have that kind of connection with and that you do trust. And
mm.
some of that is, making sure that they are not asking you for a lot of money up front before
Mhm.
you. It's how I was taught many years ago. You do the consultation, you
Mhm.
teach the self-care, you give as much information as you can. And I do joke that I have thrown information. I try and give someone as much as they can. And I say, whatever has stuck with you after today, that's what you needed to know.
Mm. Yeah.
And that this they go home and they experience the treatment, they see how they feel, they do the self-care. And if they choose to come back, that's
Mhm.
wonderful.
Well, thank you, Jade, for a beautiful conversation. So great to talk to you again. Where can people find out more about you and your work?
Thank you so much. It was so lovely to chat with you. So my website is meant2betherapies.com, and that's B with two E's, like the little buzzy
Mm.
bee. Or they can email me at jade@meant2betherapies.com. And I am working on growing my blog, so I do want to cover some of the important topics that we've discussed today as well,
Mm.
and create some resources. So if any of your listeners have any questions, I would love to hear them, or any ideas for blogs and things like that would be perfect. And I do offer the online consultations as well too, if anyone needs a bit of support as they're going through their fertility journey as well. But all the information is on the website.
Website, and you're based in Dublin. No, sorry, Northern Ireland, Belfast.
Yes, in
Yeah.
Northern Ireland, in Hillsborough.
Yes.
But that's the fantastic thing about Zoom, is that we've had our conversation today, and that we can do those Zoom consultations as well too, of teaching the self-care, of talking these things through
Mm.
with anyone anywhere in the world. It really has made us all a little bit closer together.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks also to the listeners for tuning in this week. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Instagram at thatfertilefeeling, or email me at francoise@thatfertilefeeling.com. I always love to hear from you and always get back to you. So I trained to become an abdominal therapist myself as well. So I've recently started offering these treatments in the Netherlands for anyone who's interested in having an in-person session. You can find it all on my website. So thanks, and hope to see you back next week. Bye bye. Thank you for listening to That Fertile Feeling, the podcast. If you liked what you heard, then please head over to your preferred podcast player and subscribe to the show. It would also be great if you could leave a review and rating so that other listeners can find the show easily. And if you think that anyone you know could benefit from the materials on this show, then go ahead and share it with them. It would be much appreciated. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye, love.